Hello. Continue on from our last where we stopped at interrupt. This is interrupt part 2. Here, in this example, we have an example of an interrupt an external interrupt 0 problem. In this circuit, an external interrupt is connected to a push button, where the push button, whenever triggered, is used and an external pulse to tell the microcontroller to do something else while it is doing something else in the main program. The specification of this circuit is that LED 0 is connected to port 0.0 and is used to trigger a 250 millisecond interval blink, while LED 2 or LED 1 D2 is used to trigger when push button is pressed. So in this circuit, the scenario is when LED 1 is going to continually blink with a 250 millisecond interval, while there is no external interrupt triggered from push button. LED 2 will not be triggered. There is no external push button. Is triggered at external interrupt 1. So in this example, let's look at the circuit that I've done before. In this circuit, you will see that I've done all the connection previously. Okay. So let's look at the example of interrupt. Here, when I run the simulation, you will see that LED 2 is continuously blinking at a 250 millisecond interval, while LED 1 is not triggered due to the fact that external interrupt 0 that is connected at port 3.2 is not yet been triggered. So when we trigger the interrupt, I want you to examine and look at our LED 2 and LED 1. So now, when interrupt is triggered, you will find that while interrupt D1, LED D1 is triggered, LED D2 continues to blink without any interruption. So this means that because of the short program of interrupt, the interrupt is used only to trigger the LED and stop. It doesn't change the main program that is to trigger toggle LED at D2. An interrupt is happening at the background of the main program. Now, let's look into the program. First, let's look into the program structure. Example of interrupt 0, external interrupt 0. The program structure should start like always. The header file and global definition is defined at the top of our program. Then we have the interrupt routine that is going to be void external interrupt 0. This instruction is used to call for the external interrupt as interrupt 0 is used. If we are using external interrupt 1, this will be interrupt 1. But now, because we are using external interrupt 0, this is going to be internal interrupt 0. if you look close in our program, the interrupt is declared here as a sub-function to our main program. And inside the interrupt function, we will put whatever we want to do in our interrupt. In our case example here, the program is used to toggle LED at D1. Once it's on and then it's off. If the push button if the external interrupt is triggered again, the LED is going to be toggled. Either if it's already on, it will turn off. If it's off, it will turn on again. And then the main program. In the main program, we are going to set the I/O or the pin configuration. We are going to turn on the interrupt, and then our program is going to be some sort of LED toggle program with an interval of 250 milliseconds. So the code will be something like this. Sorry. Yeah, okay. So this is our code. This is the definition declaration of header file, global definition, and this is declaring the pin used in our microcontroller. This is our interrupt subroutine program. Like I said earlier, our interrupt program is used to toggle our LED. So we are going to write a toggle LED program here. And in our main program, we initiate our interrupt. That means we put IT0 set to high because we want to set external interrupt 0 as an at negative trigger. EX0 is set to high to enable external interrupt 0, and EA is set to high to enable all interrupt use in our interrupt register, in our IE register. So I confirmed back earlier, we declare the external interrupt 0 as a negative trigger with IT0. We declare the use of external interrupt 0 by EX0 is set to high, and then we will enable our interrupt function by enable EA is set to high. Then in our main program, in our loop program, we will set the delay as 300 milliseconds and toggle the LED in LED 1. So whenever there's 300 milliseconds, LED 1 is going to toggle from on to off and off to on again. This is our main program. And if interrupt is triggered, LED 0 is going to toggle from on to off and off to on via the push button at external interrupt 0. So that's how the program works, and this is the example. Whenever an interrupt is triggered, you see LED is turned off, and when it's turned on, LED is turned on again and off again and on again and off again. While the main program continuously triggering LED at D2 to continue toggling the output of LED at D2. So here it shows that whatever in the program in our main program, the interrupt program will not disturb the main program. After the interrupt is done doing its job, it will presume whatever the main program is doing at the first place and only change the code during interrupt. When it's done doing the interrupt program, the code will continue doing what it does before the interrupt occurs. This is example 1 of our interrupt code. Next, we will look into We will go into another example of interrupt. We will look into example of interrupt with priority. Case 1, both requests interrupt at absolutely the same instant. That means if we have two interrupt and both interrupt request to trigger their interrupt at the same instant, the higher priority interrupt will be served followed by the low priority interrupt. In case 2, when a higher priority interrupt system while lower priority interrupt system is served, system stop executing the lower priority interrupt request, serve the higher priority interrupt first, and then resume executing the lower priority interrupt from where it is left previously. In case 3, lower priority interrupt system while higher priority interrupt is served. So for case 3, a system move on executing a high priority interrupt request, serve lower priority interrupt request on completion of the high priority interrupt request first. So let's see the example. Interrupt priority example problem. Specification. We have 3 LED here. LED D3, D2 and D1. LED D3 is going to toggle at 500 milliseconds per interval. LED D2 is going to toggle on pressing the push button external interrupt 1 and display a string of external interrupt 1, while LED 1 or LED 0 D1 toggles on pressing of push button or external interrupt 0 and display external interrupt 0. In both requests at the same time instant, external interrupt 0 will be served followed by external interrupt 1 and then followed by the toggle of D3 with 500 millisecond interval. Let's look at the code. This is the code in our code now we are using two interrupt. We have external interrupt 0 and external interrupt 1, and now our main program, the main program is to toggle LED 2 with 500 millisecond interval. Let's look at the example simulation for this interrupt. I'm going to stop this video here and continue at the simulation of interrupt in part 3.